Hello. I was trying to wrap up a phone call before I got on. Hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. I'm Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And let me do this because I feel like this light is playing games with me. Also, I don't want to look like I don't have no clothes on. There we go. Anyway, hello, everybody. Let me get this going. There we go. This is what we're going to get into today. Hoodoo for Everyone, Modern Approaches to Magic, Conjure, Root Work, and Liberation by Sherry Stone. Couple things. I did not look up who the author was, other than I made sure that she was actually a Black woman. So there's one. That's one. And two, I didn't look to see what she looked like. I didn't look to see what her age was or anything like that. I did not read the reviews on this book. I physically picked up a copy of this book at Barnes & Noble. I had featured it in my live about 2 weeks ago. So it wasn't from Amazon. I didn't do any research on it. I saw the title and I thought, what is Hoodoo for Everyone? What does that look like? So we're going to get into this now. I'm going to organize this. I'm going to talk about it from a technical point of view of just the writing style. And then I'm going to get into some specific things. And then I'm going to tie it all up in the end. It's a good amount of information to go over. It's about approximate, just over less than 300 pages. The writing is not very large, so, it's a lot. I've dog-eared several pages. That's where I'm going to kind of be a little all over the place with specifics. So, the writing style. It's in a narrative type writing style, so it's not like witchy, a lot of the witchy books that I might review in the past or that you might have read, where maybe in the beginning the author is kind of giving their ideas of how they come to witchcraft, and the rest is sort of more, technical, for lack of better words. Is not, it's definitely narrative the entire way through the book. I like that type of style writing when I actually put together, this actually reinforced how I really need to just make that happen reading this book. So let me just say that. This definitely reinforced what I would like to bring to the world in a nonfiction book. So there's that. So that's the style of the book. So if you like that type, kind of that first person speaking, you'll enjoy this. There's a lot of Bible scriptures throughout the book. A lot. Now, again, if you are someone who has some understanding of how hoodoo works, or you yourself practice hoodoo, then you would probably be like, duh, of course there's Bible scriptures. That makes sense. But I want to kind of bring it back to what this book is about. So hoodoo, I'm reading, Hoodoo is a folklore, well, first off, a beginner's guide to an inclusive hoodoo practice, history, spellwork, folklore, and herbs. So let's just get into what she's saying it's about. A beginner's guide to an inclusive hoodoo practice. Let's just break that down. So as I'm reading this book, Hoodoo is for Everyone, there is an area where it happens in the beginning and then somewhere out the book where she says, can hoodoo be practiced by, non-Black folk, essentially. I want to get to that right now. Actually, yeah, in her appendix. I am not Black. Can I still practice hoodoo? Yes. But learn Black history and understand the causes and suffering of enslaved people. Next, figure out how to practice hoodoo in your own way. That means adding your own influences in protection and blessings by adding herbs, roots, and incantations from your own identity. Respect the heroes and legends that you have chosen by embracing who you are and reaching out for what you want to become. Doing hoodoo without this respect of our ancestors is disrespectful to me and makes hoodoo watered down. Just like doing hoodoo without the Bible or without knowing the oral traditions passed down through hoodoo practitioners, or by blending it with the other tools that the enslaved Africans did not have access to waters it down and changes its face. So that right there tells you a lot. Now, I'm going to tell you my issue with that in the appendix. I read this whole book, then I get to the appendix and I see this Q&A type thing. Throughout the book, she mentions if you, first of all, she talks about sacred text and how she spends some time in the beginning saying how you may have an issue with the Bible, especially if you are a Black American. You may have issues with the Bible because of how you've come to know the Bible. How would you know the Bible if you were a Black American? Well, the real question is, how would your people, Black Americans, come to learn of the Bible, right? It was forced on them. Now, I'm going to interject some actual real history because she talked about, folklore. Real history is you would have had a large number of illiterate Black folk who were, in the time frame that she's in enslavement, active slaves, being active slaves, they would not have been literate. So I'm going to ask everybody who's paying attention to this video, if you can't read, how are you using the Bible in your practice? How is that watered? So that's watered down. Remember what I just read, what she said, right, about it being watered down if you don't use it, in the answer to the other part, not using the Bible. It was really, the question was about, see, I'm getting ready to go on, because it's like this throughout the whole book. You have one section talking about one thing, and you go off. Now, I'm the queen of tangents, so I get it. But in this capacity, it's like you're confusing the matter. The question was, I am not Black, can I still practice hoodoo? Then she brings up, like, not using the Bible. It waters it down. It waters down hoodoo if you don't use the Bible. So my question is, why in the book, Miss Sherry Stone, do you reference this concept of sacred text? In a book, what you considered sacred, you make the book sacred. And if that's the case, why? So if I'm using another book I deem sacred and I'm using that in my root work, why is that watered down? But I'm using the roots. Also, using the root, she said using the herbs, roots and incantations from your own identity. I'm a Black girl from Camden, New Jersey. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. First of all, that's up north. I have access to on the East Coast. So what I would have had access to, because that's where I'm from, right? Or do you mean, like, where do you mean? Also, I'm predominant, right? Would you use the Bible if you can't read or write? Exactly, Empress Gov. I want to really get into this, about this, because this is the question when I'm trying. See, I'm all over the place because I'm really struggling to be fair. I didn't like the book. I didn't like the book. What I was trying to even find some stuff I could work with, just as someone working with herbs. She doesn't even do a great job at that, in my opinion. But as I spoke to someone who has practiced hoodoo for years, and they said, you're not going to find that in a book. Because even those who do practice hoodoo, like someone, because she refers to herself, it says here, AKA that hoodoo lady, they are never going to tell you the exact anything to do any kind of working. I don't know if you've picked up on that. If you've been on TikTok, if you've been on YouTube and someone's a hoodoo worker, they never really give you everything. Not that on my channel I'm giving you every single thing, but I'm giving you enough that if you watch the video where I'm performing a spell, you could be like, I could do that. And then you're going to add your personal touch, the very thing, you're a witch, you're a practitioner. So that little something, that thing that makes it work for you, you're going to add that. And that's how I always preface it whenever I share any work, or if I'm talking about using any type of spell work, and I'm getting into the nitty-gritty of what it is in the spell. I like to leave it open for, see, this is what you can do. She attempts to do that in this book, but she's not giving you really much of anything. I want to say most of the book, she just keeps telling you to use roots, herbs, and then she gives you Bible scriptures. She uses the term hashtag update hoodoo to modernize hoodoo. But how is it modernized if you're in her, to me, her idea, what I read here is modernized is basically finding technology to organize your Bible scriptures for the type of work you need to do. Like, are you doing protection work? So find all the scriptures that support that. So let's back to, because I did went on my tangent. Let's get back to this thing, because this little one section really sums up most of this book. Hey, gemstones. So again, the question was, I am not black. Can I still practice hoodoo? And she says yes. So one, there are going to be a lot of hoodoo practitioners out and about, but we're like, no, you can't. So that's that already. Remember, the book is Hoodoo is for everyone. She's essentially saying, without saying it, yeah, but you have to do it based on your own influences. So I'm from New Jersey originally. I grew up in the projects. My influences are none of these things, honestly. Although there was some, well, I grew up in a time where the older folk, like somebody's grandmom, when I was a little kid, they had gardens. My mom didn't have no garden. My mom had houseplants, but they had gardens outside. And I remember them growing all kinds of stuff. I'm not saying that the older women that were growing gardens were all hoodoo workers, but that's where I would have seen herbs. You know what I'm saying? Like us playing as kids, and they would be out in the yard, and you learn things as kids, not because somebody sat you down and showed, and taught, gave you a lecture, because you just saw it happening. You would see them picking stuff up, and they'd be like, oh, the such and such is coming in this year. Hey, Olivia. That's that type of thing. You just kind of learn, that way by just watching the adults around you. So was I exposed to like roots and herbs and things like that being grown? Yes, in that capacity, because I was surrounded. My grandmother had a garden. That's why. My grandma would not have called it. First of all, most of those, they're not calling themselves hoodoo workers. They're not even using the word hoodoo. Just not gonna happen. But that's in that time period. If you're talking during slavery, if you're talking the time outside of slavery for many years, most black folk couldn't read. Most black people in this country would not have, we had a good large population of white people at that time compared to where we are now that couldn't read. Because remember, there is more agricultural, type society. As time goes on, education comes in, and school happens and all that sort of stuff. But not everybody can read, but black people for certain couldn't read. So when you're talking about, this is my biggest beef when people speak, and I'm just speaking from a historical point of view. It's not to attack anybody or what they believe, because there is this concept that it's not hoodoo if you don't have the Bible. You're right, it's not hoodoo as we recognize it today. I have a better one for you. My issue with this reluctance to move forward, and this is not just to beat up on hoodoo workers, because I find this in witchcraft as well. I've been guilty of this. It's not authentic unless it looks like it's labor intensive. If it doesn't look old and worn, think of like your book of shadow pages. If you don't, soak it in the tea water, it's not authentic. You want it to look more antique-like. So it adds authenticity to it because it's been around longer. So that means it's more relevant. It's more important. It's sacred. The practices that people talk about when even witchcraft, oh, well, you don't need to do all that fancy stuff. You got people harassing people about Dollar Tree candles because that's not authentic. So, you have to buy a $20 candle that somebody put their intention in, and then it's real. And I'm not mad at the person selling a $20 candle that put their intentions in and selling it. By the way, that's not the point of this. But you can work with that, because I have purchased $20 candles that somebody put intentions in. Actually, I've purchased candles that were more than $20 that they put their intentions in. And it did work, by the way, that I did purchase from, just heads up. So I have nothing against that. I have taken my money and I've done that. And I've actually taken a Dollar Tree candle and I've worked that candle and I've had success with that as well. Um, Her version of updating and modernizing hoodoo, by the way, is using candles. It's using crystals. It's using tarot because that typically would, that's modernizing it. That's hashtag update hoodoo. If you really wanted to hashtag update hoodoo, you would explore the concept because we're in a situation right now in the United States where Christianity is falling out of favor with the younger people. As you know, younger meaning like 20s and 30s, by the way. We're finding that every year, every several years, they do, their census and they're finding more and more people are less religious. So just because there's the Bible in it doesn't, if you're not using the Bible and you're practicing hoodoo, you are not watering it down. Because I want to get back to that. You're not watering it down because she even acknowledges in the beginning you can use something that's considered a sacred text. What you considered a sacred text. So let's say it's the Quran, although that would be weird. But let's say it's the Quran. They don't usually go hand in hand. But I'm really just playing devil's advocate with this. Let's say you're doing that, and there were things that, not the whole book, but there were certain passages and things that you saw that you wanted to use, although that you're not supposed to do that. But let's say you did, you wanted to be a rebellious person. I mean, you're already being rebellious because you're using. She tells you use the Bible like a spell book. Basically, she's hearkening to what we've all been hearing on IG, YouTube, and now on TikTok and Facebook. Would you hear a lot of people that language? Oh, it's a spell book. She's just saying the same thing in this book. I teach you how to use the Bible as a spell book. I can tell you, as someone who was once upon a time in the church, I can tell you, as someone who I have multiple ministers in my family, come from a lot of ministers. They don't like that, and also they can tell you, especially somebody who actually spent some time educating themselves. Like I have people in my family who actually went to school to get some sort of degree. There's Bible schools and stuff like that, like colleges. Don't ask me, but they're not accredited, but y'all know. They went and did that. And I celebrate them all, by the way. Kudos to you. That's your spiritual path. They will tell you, no, it's not a spell book. And they would have a lot of reasons and passages to tell you, in fact. And this is to all of them. Now, I'm not saying that they're right. I'm just saying, since y'all in the same lane working with this Bible, these people would tell you differently. They would have a whole lot to tell you and say, in fact, that is not true. But I know there's a lot of witches who will, beat you over the head about the dang on book of Psalms. So you could already see how I feel about this book based on that. If you do not have a problem with using the Bible, if you are someone who is okay with that, you're okay with that terminology, yeah, the Bible is a book of spells. You can find a lot of spells in there. Then you might really enjoy this book. I would like to, and she uses the term deliverance often. That's a very Christian term. And I am not comfortable with that. It took me years to divorce myself, decolonize myself of Christian ideology. I had been indoctrinated since I was a little girl. It started early. Not as early as some. I know some people, they were like born into it. Like as soon as their earliest memories of like being a toddler and a preschooler, they remember being in church as well. I don't have that. We didn't really start going to church like that. We being me and my mom until like I was like 8, 9, I think. We started going to church around I was like 8, 9 years old. And it was a Pentecostal church. They would have a heart attack using as a spell book. Exactly. She says it a lot in here, so it wasn't like one sentence, I'm running away with it. Please know, she actually has another book I didn't realize where she's basically teaching you how to use the Bible as a spell book. The whole book is dedicated to that concept. So go off if you like that. You'll find that. But I was indoctrinated. I mean, that's a formative years, 8, 9 years old. I remember it. I remember going. I remember from that point, going into my teenage years, all it's being reinforced. And I remember terms like getting saved and then backsliding. And I remember my mom being a backslider because she stopped going to church. Because, ooh, let me tell you, y'all don't know nothing. And them times with some Pentecostal churches in the 80s. Ooh, y'all think, let me tell you, it was something to be. And here's the crazy part. The church we was going to, I told you I come from a family of a lot of ministers. That was one of them. We was going to his church. We had to get in a car. It wasn't close to home. We had to drive kind of far to get there. Far probably being like 30 minutes, but that was a lot. Look, we hood people. We don't be driving, quite far out like that. So we drove, my mom would drive and different area. And we would get there, and what was the church called? Cecil? I think it was Cecil. Cecil Church? Am I wrong? I can't ask somebody in my family because I might trigger some people. I could ask my mom, but I didn't ask her ahead of time. Anyway, so we go to this church, and I would listen. Being a little kid, I don't remember much of what was preached in the church. I'm gonna be honest with you. But as I got older, I went to a different church, and my mom started going to a local church in the area. I did start listening to those sermons. I did hear it, and then I became a teenager. First of all, coming into puberty and having sexual feelings and being attracted sexually, because that's the thing, guys. I felt sinful, shamed about it. Then, as I get further in my teenage years and I have a boyfriend, the amount of guilt and shame I had if we did anything was crazy. I would be literally begging this God to not send me to hell because of whatever little sexual act we might have done, kissing, touch, anything. When I finally did the big act, I thought I knew I was going to hell. I was repenting. And then someone who was a spiritual mentor at the time told me, you can't actively sin. You can't sin knowing you were going to sin and then knowing you were going to just ask God to forgive you. You're not allowed to do that. And I was specifically told that's what the Catholics do. Y'all ain't know them Pentecostal and Baptist people don't be effing with them Catholics like that? No, they don't, especially in the black community. We be like, well, child, they don't like them. They think they are, basically Satanists. Then what am I? Anyway, yeah. So, like, that's the point of view I'm coming from. I had to get rid of, these are formative years that I had to get rid of feeling, being normal. That's normal for women, people to have feelings of sexual desire. As you get older, you're going through puberty, your hormones, that's a very normal thing. I felt so much shame and guilt around that. And then, y'all, I had my daughter at 22. That's around the time, so the guilt around that, and I was kind of coming out of it at that point. At that point, I was coming out of it. I was waking up. It wasn't a person. It wasn't anything that helped me with this process. Any person. It was me. It was the rational, my higher self, my intuition's telling me something's not right here. And I had a series of events, of different things that's happening. I was like, there was so much. I'm just going to say a lot of guilt, a lot of shame accompanied with Christianity, the teachings of the Bible. It's not even, because I've had somebody say, well, maybe it was just the church you were going to. It was like, no, I don't think you understand. I'm the type of person, it's hard for me to do things in like a normal way. So when you tell me my whole life is based on this and my afterlife, I actually read that Bible and I actually studied it. I had notes. I attended Bible study. I became someone who led or co-led a Bible study. Like I went all in as a young person. They really had me. Shout out to my best friend that stood beside me through all that. Because I was talking real crazy to her at one point, and she was like, okay. Like, where's this coming from? Girl, I left it. But this was Bible teachings. I'm learning from the Bible. No, and it wasn't about me misinterpreting anything. The words were right there. I had several people on deck I could talk to. By the way, fun fact, my mom is not even involved in the church at this point as much as she had been. I blame her because she let them people get their clutches on me, let that whole ideology. I was fine until then. She was like a straight hippie up until that point. Like, she was into it, and then they got her, and she had to be saved. And oh, side note, I never was baptized. I wanted to be baptized so bad, and I kept saying, "Mom, we gotta get." She baptized herself and ain't baptized me. She never. She's like, "Oh, it's gonna be your turn. We're gonna get to it." I was afraid of it because I thought I was gonna drown in the pool. I wanted the pomp and circumstance. I wanted the ritual. I wanted to be a part of that so bad. And it never happened. And I don't really understand why she never got around to it other than she stopped going to church. But then she went back, but she still didn't get me baptized. I guess, she just wasn't getting around to it. I am so grateful. I know some people who have been baptized and they became witches, and they wanted, like, I know some people who want to do like some sort of ritual to sort of reverse that, because you think about what a baptismal is and think about what you are um, doing, what you're committing to. Uh, so yeah, that is something you can set up a ritual to sort of reverse that if you want. If you kind of want to really divorce yourself of Christian ideology, all of that. That could be the or a cord cutting ceremony to sort of separate yourself completely. I know for a lot of people this sounds really, who are not even practicing Christians, this scares them because that's how much it reached you. It's indoctrination. They had us it's in the media, it's all the family that it's the way people just speak, and it reinforces it, and you believe that, well, it might be some truth to this. This is why I can't F with the Bible situation that this woman keeps referring to. All this work that I've done to separate and to leave room for my brain to function in a place of not heaven and hell, not this supposedly all-knowing, all-seeing God that allows atrocities to occur, which I go back to. And there's a lot of people saying this as well. Either he really, this Christian God really is all powerful, but he's evil. Because why would he allow these things to happen? Do not say free will. That doesn't make any sense. Infants and small children, they didn't ask to be victimized, to be slaughtered, to be predators to hurt them. An infant who is 6 months old and has a diagnosis of cancer. How is, they pick that? Oh no, God called them home. They're his little angels. Then what was the purpose of being born? I was baptized and my mom is no longer herself in the church. She's a priestess of Ifa. Boom. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I have recently said to my mother, I'm trying to convert you. I said, my job, I have no reason to convert anybody. I do YouTube because I really just enjoy talking about the subject matter. I like having a sense of community. I don't like being the only person I know that talks about witchcraft. So that's where this came from. Is I started blogging and then I came over to YouTube and I haven't looked back since. I enjoy doing this for that reason. I like kind of talking. That's why I started the Discord channel, to actually talk to other people. But I like sharing the stuff that I learn. I like sharing the stuff that I do and I come across under the pagan umbrella. But conversion is not part of that. That's not my path. I am not trying to convert anybody. I have no interest in doing that. If you want to get on this path, we cool. Let's do it together. Let's talk about it. But if you are against it, then go someplace else. You don't need to be over here. Yes, my experience was similar. I grew up in a Church of Christ. The sentiment about Catholics was you could do anything and say Hail Marys and be okay. That's how I was taught too about Catholic. And it's so funny because I actually know a Black woman, and she's from the East Coast. I know her. She is Catholic. Her family is not, but she intentionally became. She sought out that path for herself, and her reason that I remember she shared was because the Catholic faith actually acknowledged women, like the feminine divine, I should say, in like Mary and all that, the saints and all that sort of stuff. So that was her logic behind going into that. But I am trying to actively convert my mother into just paganism in general. You don't have to call yourself a witch. But do you know how frustrating it is to know my mother was born with gifts? My grandmother admitted to this on at least more than several occasions to me. Always added the add-on of, but those were gifts from God. um, she has gifts. She does. I just want her to. I want her to fully explore that. Having the idea of one God is nothing wrong, because there are people, we know witches who believe in many gods, or they only work with one goddess. It's not that they don't believe, they believe that's the one they're supposed to work with, right? We can get with that. So the idea of you working with this one God, this you believe this one power, this one source that's the creator of all, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it gets a little weird and murky when you acknowledge specifically that's the Christian God, and you're going by the teachings of the Bible and the story, and you're using that and applying that in real life. Back to her. If you were to take a sacred text, if that's the case, I could use a lot of Greek mythology, and I can use excerpts from that, whole stories, quite frankly, as spells, as part of my spell work. I could, declare those. I could take excerpts, quotes, and I could speak those out. You can do those with movies, by the way, in books, in fiction books. I could speak that out. I can cast that spell using my intention, using the herbs and roots, because she just generally says herbs and roots. Don't think I'm just saying that. That's what she writes. And I was like, what herbs and what roots? I digress. I had a time reading this book. Y'all, I was going to say so much more, and I was going over my notes and kind of talking it through, and my daughter said, don't say that to people. She was like, don't say that. I was like, all right, I'm a reel it in. I'm a reel it in, because I was so disturbed by this. I have nothing against the lady that wrote the book, because I know she's a part of a lot of the way people think about this. In my opinion, honestly, I can speak from this country. Blacks in this country, the best thing we could do is divorce ourselves from Christianity. For sure. It would be the best thing for us to divorce ourselves of that. Then the true warrior spirits can take over. Because freedom is never going to come from peaceful protest. Freedom is never going to come from, and the peaceful protest stuff is coming. That when you talk Dr. King, although they found excerpts where he wouldn't always talk about that no more, but for the time in his life that he was talking that peaceful protest nonsense, it worked, but so far we're not changing anything. When you're dealing with a group of people who only recognize violence, and they don't recognize peaceful protests, they just will hurt. They'll just kick and punch on you and lock you up and put you in jail and kill you and put dogs on you. You're not winning them over with, that philosophy. That's not really working on them. Not in the grand scheme of things. You can win a battle, but we talking about winning the war. It would only be violence. You can only fight violence with violence. I think of this often, and I think of my role in it. As I get older, I get less and less scared of jail. I get less and less scared of death. And let me tell you how powerful and dangerous it is for the races. Because as long as I can continue to draw breath and I have some strength, people like me exist, and we would be a threat. Teaching this Bible, coming in with these excerpts is not helping you. You have something here. This is just a version of what we once had when we were in another country, when we were in Africa. We had that power. We already had that. I've heard people say, well, if you had that power, then how did they come in? How did the Dutch come in? Yes, real crone energy, exactly. How did the Dutch, because, let's go back. Before there was, let's talk a little history. Before there was the Dutch It was actually those further north in Africa, the Middle East. It was those, the Arabs. It was actually them who were hell-bent on genocide. That's why I struggle with, again, we have a short memory here. We have a short memory and we don't make connections because it's not taught. But I'm going to leave that alone. So when the Dutch came initially to Africa, and when that started and they started taking people, and then, the Spanish and so forth, and, then eventually all the other countries, the colonizers, when they came in, and they were taking us and they were doing all this sort of stuff. The idea that, well, your magic didn't protect you. Your traditional African religions or spirituality didn't protect you. Y'all, I'm going to help you out with this. Did it ever occur to anybody that we just didn't, as a people, think like that? West Africans didn't necessarily think evil on that level. We never thought of chattel slavery. We didn't think like that because maybe it's something wrong with the colonizers that that was an evil we didn't understand, didn't really have a concept for. So no, we didn't have anything set up for that because we didn't operate that way. We didn't think that way. We're still human. So yes, at a human level, there's still war, there's still envy, there's still jealousy, there's still violence that's happening amongst these Africans. I'm not saying it was a utopia, but the level that they were doing things, those people didn't think, my people didn't think like that. So no, they didn't have something for that because they didn't think like that. The Chinese had gunpowder for the longest time and never thought to use it as a weapon. Guess who thought to use it that way? Yes, still living in touch with the earth. Same with the Native Americans. They weren't thinking the way these people were thinking. And is that a positive, by the way? Because you're more violent and more disgusting, the things you were willing to do. And this is a conversation for those who happen to be black and they think like this, because I've come across black people who say that, well, if it was all that powerful, how come it didn't save us from being captured and brought into slavery? And sound South American. Yes, in South America. Because our people weren't evil on that scale. We didn't think on that scale. That's why. Why? The other cultures don't think like that. That's the short answer. They didn't think to be that evil. So when we here in 2023, and we are still having these conversations, tap into your true power. This is what was done because of slavery. Hoodoo came out of that as a black American experience, taking what was our spirituality and what had been passed down secretly. And these people, it's really, root work, honestly, is about healing. It's two parts to this. There's the magical aspect, and then there's the actual practicality aspect. Those old ladies I saw grow in the garden is because they was using a lot of those herbs for things, because you couldn't go to a doctor. In the 60s, the last I married twice, the second man that I married, he was born in the 60s. He's still alive. In the 60s, if you were a black person, depending on where you lived in this country, and you needed to go to a doctor or a dentist, you had to go see a veterinarian. And, civil rights thing that happened in the 60s, there are people who are alive talking, well, they're in their 50s. If you were born in the late 60s, you're in your 50s right now. You're like in your mid 50s. They're very much alive and walking around. They were born into that. So their mothers and fathers, yeah, those people, we're not even going back that far. Somebody's grandmom living today, if they needed to go to a doctor, they had to go see a vet. The indoctrination that has been done on us, that we are now in 2023, and instead of recognizing, and she does a little bit talk about the concept of using herbs and roots to help heal, because there's that aspect. It helps to heal. when we had no medical, no one was, unless they doing experiments on us, when we had no medical and we had to figure it out and guard against diseases and so forth. The cleanliness aspect that Hoodoo preaches about, the baths and all that, I want y'all to think objectively. Why would Black Americans focus so much on cleanliness in a spiritual practice? Why do you think it was so important to make floor washes and all types of other things to bless the home and to protect the home? But cleanliness is a big factor. Why are these washes so important? You don't see a lot of that in some other spiritual systems. You see you see a version of that, but not to the extent that Hoodoo preaches, that Hoodoo talks, or not preaches, but I would say that Hoodoo comes with, the practice comes with. Why do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from? Why would these group of people focus on that? Oh, I don't know. There's a number of reasons that could come with that cleanliness. First of all, for people who may not, to go into the waters to think about the process of cleaning yourself as an enslaved person. You don't have running water. It gets cold some places. I want you to think that out. So fast forward out of slavery. We're not in slavery anymore. Just in general. Most of us, we're struggling because we never got our 40 acres and a mule. But we persevered regardless, and we continue to go forward in life, even though they burned our towns down, and we had to repeatedly start over. Similar situation that was happening with the Arabs in Africa, where they kept warring and kept coming after our people, pushing them further and further into the interior Africa, and in the hospitable sections of the continent. Repeatedly, this was going on over and over again. But Muslims, Black Muslims, that's okay. You don't know your history. Learn your history. I'm not just saying this stuff because I heard it on the internet. I was a homeschooler and I taught these things. I sourced books. I looked for accredited works, programs. I put together my own curriculum for my children. I don't believe in no internet stuff and all that because that's just like the public school system. And everybody has an agenda. I taught pre-colonial African history to my children, as well as the United States history. Everything can't just have a European influence. So I'm a learned person. I also been to college. I never got to graduate because I had my babies. But anyway, that's enough about me. My tangent. Just in case somebody is watching this and they're like, what is she talking about? I've never heard this. Because they don't want you to know this. Just like we're in a process in this country right now where they're trying to state by state not let our children, all the kids know what's going on. They don't want you to know anything. They don't want you to know history. So why do you keep bringing in that part of history? It was beaten into our ancestors. This is my biggest issue with when it wasn't beaten into our people, they went over to various countries. I'm a K-pop person. It is so weird when I find somebody in K-pop who is a devout Christian. Someone in South Korea who's a devout Christian, because they're all over. That's the missionary work. That's them spreading the gospel throughout this country, by the way, always with an agenda. You know what? I haven't watched it yet, but my best friend did, and I've been seeing clips of it. What is it called? Happy Shiny People, about the Duggars. That's not just about the Duggars, that docuseries that's happening right now. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It lets you know how insidious this goes. If you really think it's about just some Bible scriptures, if you really think it's just about people wearing like old-fashioned clothes and soft-spoken women, it's bigger than that. The agenda has always been bigger than that. Even back then, it's always been more than just about the Bible scriptures. People, we got to get out of this. When I read this book for a reason, I was attracted to it. I saw the Hoodoo for everyone. Well, I'm everyone. I'm somebody coming with a sense of knowledge about who I am. It took me so long to get to this point, by the way, to understand who I really was and my place in this world. And my place is not still mimicking enslaved ancestors. It is 100% about controlling people. Y'all, we gotta do better than this. I am proof. I'm literally sitting in a place that I saw in my mind's eye. I reached out to my ancestors, the one that she talks about somewhat in here. I I reach out to ancestors and I communicate with them. They made themselves to me because I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have anybody who talked about ancestors in my physical presence. Yeah, there's the internet, but I didn't know how to do that. And there wasn't a lot of comfort information out there that didn't sound like a bunch of foolishness, to be honest. They came to me in dreams when I was going through something in dreams. But those dreams were manifesting into reality, by the way. I talked about this several times where I was actually haunted. Um, I yeah, that was a time. But anyway, yeah. And when I would wake up, I had physical marks on my body from when I was being physically attacked in my dreams, by this entity that that attached itself to me because I was doing something completely ignorant about protection at the time. And that's what happened. But my ancestors got me through that process. They came and they showed up for me. And then the way they showed up for me in that dream has been the way they've always shown up to me in other dreams since then, years later. That's how I identify who I'm working with. That's them. So, working with my ancestors, understanding how to work with them, it's not a parent-child relationship. It's a collective energy, and I respect and revere, and they give me messages. There's never expectation that they will or have to do anything for me. There's an overall protection. My ancestors make up spirits who were people who were related to me, or people who I would simply say who were part of my life, in a substantial way. My grandmother had a really good friend. That woman was like family to me. She came to me as an ancestor. And then there's actual blood. My bloodline is predominantly of African descent. But if you could look at me and see there's something else in there. So that other something else, I believe I truly believe, and it's come to me, that they have a desire to be even more protective of me because of how I even come to be. Most likely, it was out of violence, an act of violence. That's how I got this in my blood. It wasn't because, there's some love story between some European person. No, it was. No, most of Black Americans, is not a love story. It was out of violence because we were seen as property and we were bred on, or some other sexual deviant acts that they took out on us. So that's the energy I'm coming with, of that sense of self, of knowledge, and then to understand fully, how do you still in 2023, using the term in the book, she's referring to her own hashtag update Hoodoo, and you still say to not use the Bible is to water it down. Hoodoo was something it's something out of nothing. I love we should have respect for that. We should revere it, but we should be trying to impress our ancestors. We should be trying to do them a solid and taking it up a notch for real. For instance, that's what they had to do. Listen, my grandmother, my mother, grandmother's mother, yes, those women, and then her mother, they would have definitely believed in the Bible. They would have definitely believed in Jesus Christ and God and all of that. They would have 100% been true believers in that. Why, though? Do you know the only book they put in our hands would be a Bible eventually? The only thing we could learn was the Bible. So for a group of people, these enslavers, they didn't consider us actual people. You don't find it suspicious that that's the knowledge we're allowed to have? By the way, there was a slave Bible, by the way. Never forget. Even the practice of church that Black folks still do to this day, that we hold love and respect for, was born in slavery. Now, have we turned it into something else? Yes. Prime example, the N-word. It's ugly, but we use it, and it doesn't mean the same thing to us when we use it with each other. Okay, so I can buy that. I can get into that. So yeah, we did the same thing. But that Bible, though, that's different. You're not changing anything. You're taking those phrases. To me, what the sacred part of the Bible is so tainted and so foul because how it was put on our people. Not so even my cousins that I don't know of in Africa, the repeated indoctrination over there. Have y'all seen what is happening in specific, like different parts of Africa? South Africa that comes to my mind immediately with Christianity and what that looks like over there. Have you seen the ridiculousness, the theatrics that these people are doing, and they call that their church? It's such a odd. It's so being here in this country, seeing like videos of what they do. It's like, why are y'all doing? It's the most bizarre things. You know, they take it up a notch. I'm gonna tell you one thing about my people. If we get a hold of it, it's gonna have some flavor on it. And they didn't turn it into something, a show. It's a show. It's a show. And they're devout. They're devout. We got to do better, y'all. We have got to do better. We have got to decolonize. I am so grateful I'm seeing so many people. I love being on TikTok because I get to see so many people who are in their 20s and 30s and yes, 40s talk of this and how they are learning. It's not that they become atheists and they don't believe in spirituality at all. It's not that they all are becoming witches or pagans. It's that they can a lot. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I believe there's a creator. I believe there's an overall creator that designed all this. I don't believe this is all happenstance. There's spirituality. I believe that there is this concept. I don't know what have it all framed out, but they understand it. They get that. And they're just coming from, and I think that's a beautiful place to just come from. This idea that there's something bigger. I don't have all the answers because none of us do. And just work from there. As opposed to thinking that this book that has been translated, the King James Version, y'all, that's a person. Y'all know that's a person, right? That was a person that actually existed who modified this Bible. A European man. And you use this in your magic intentionally, and this was put on your people. This is the only thing they would tell them. And you think they was trying to save our souls? They was rounding us up on Sunday to keep us together so they can finally have rest, and a bunch of niggas ain't running around because they was scared of us if we actually got together and we had too much time on our hands. Till this day, when you are a group of black people, you want to know who the racists are? It's the one staring at us clutching their pearls, or the one bold enough to walk over. Y'all call them Karens and walk over and well, what's going on? What are you guys up to? What are you doing? What's going on? That's what that looks like. That's where that's coming from. If trauma is passed down in our bloodline, what do you think is passed down in these colonizers' bloodline? But y'all still want to go with this. Y'all still want to use the book of Psalms because that's where but there's some stuff in there. You can't discount that. Learn. Okay, look at that. Look at what's in there. Develop, evolve. Write your own scriptures. If you really want to update this, write your own passages. You know what that looks like? That looks like what we already do as witches who write spells. That's what that looks like. You know all those books that I talk about here and they have spells in them? That's what that looks like. Do that for yourself. Use the herbs and the roots and the washes and all that sort of stuff. Take it to a new level. You don't need it. I'm sorry. Somebody said, well, it's not the same. My people couldn't read before this, so tell me what they were doing. The people who couldn't read, the black people who could not read, who were practicing hoodoo, what did they do? Oh, they memorized it. They memorized all the passages. They memorized all those passages and they used them every time. On demand. They just knew everything to put down. Really? Enslaved Africans, they memorize all of them? All of the hoodoo workers across, really? That doesn't, all of them? No, that would have come, let's just talk about this from, again, that would have come into play, I'm trying to think of the years. I wish I had looked this up a little bit more, that the black population was becoming more literate. So what, the 20s? I want to say probably more in the 20s? Not all, but more. to 1910s, the early 1900s. Would you say that? The early 1900s, you have more literacy coming in the population. When did public schools start in this country? Because people are also confused about that. They think public schools has just always been a thing. It wasn't. And if you look at other countries, it don't work the way it works here. And here, it was always with a specific purpose. It was to get you literate to a certain point. Always to a certain point. I'm getting ready to go on the whole thing about that. Y'all, we got to do better. This book, if you are already here and you already like, you're okay with that, you might be okay with this. You really might. Honestly, she's not really giving you much of information except Bible verses. And I think that's the most disturbing thing about this book for me. Because you're not giving me real information on how to really do hoodoo. You're telling me you're telling me modern approaches to magic, conjure, root work, and liberation. I would expect a little bit more examples of what that would look like. Listen to this section. This is in the ethical hoodoo section, creating an inclusive prayer. She says, here are example house blessings. And I highlight it just in case you look at this. Prayer 1. That's how it starts off. No deity, no event. Keep this house in perfect harmony and protect it from negativity. Prayer 2 is, how is that a prayer? Okay, I would have said option 1, but anyway, prayer 2, add the event. We are so excited and grateful for this new home. Before we enter it, we ask that this house be protected from any negativity and that it is full of perfect harmony. Prayer 3 instead of option 3. That's weird. Again, add the deity or ancestor. Well, first of all, I would add both, but that's another conversation. I am asking that the spirit of our grandmother enter this house before we move into it. Keep it, Grandma, in perfect harmony and peace. Keep it, Grandma, from any negative forces. Make sure that we have comfortable rest and enjoy each moment we are given. And then prayer 4, or I guess option 4, add a Bible verse. And then she tells you specifically, Proverbs, look at this. You see this? 24:3-4. Yeah, 23:3-4. So you notice how the other parts were kind of like vaguish, but when we get to anything to do with the Bible, there's more depth. And then she goes on, and it's even just, to be honest, it's just a bigger paragraph compared to the other options. Girl, what are you doing? What are you doing? Listen, to let you know how 100% and 10 tones down I am, literally, my grandmother, this woman has dementia. I ain't trying to argue with this woman, but you got one, maybe two. One, maybe two before I be like, no. No, I don't agree with what you're saying, no. Because she'll come, with the talk like that too, and I'm like, nah, I'm gonna have to pull gracefully tell you, respectfully, no, I don't agree with you. I just felt like it was a lot of, and I saw a review for this book, by the way, and someone said it felt like she didn't tell you anything. Really, you felt like you didn't get any real information from this book. I was looking for something. You keep talking about roots. So when I finally get to the section where she's like giving a little bit of detail, ethical hoodoo was like, I think this is for non-Black people. She just wrote this section for that purpose. Then there's a section on voting and election work, but it never really gives you any information other than a Bible scripture at the end. I'm not lying. I'm going to end with this. I told you I would go sections. This is the section part. This is a section on using fiction and nonfiction as sacred words. Then, oh child, okay. She quotes, so this is an opportunity in this section. I'm thinking you could use Zora Neale Hurston. You talking hoodoo, right? You could use Alice Walker. You could use a lot of different folk. Their words. There's poets of the time, the Harlem Renaissance. There's so many sources you could have picked. Y'all, why does she use as an example of poetry, of using fiction and nonfiction as sacred words in a book about hoodoo written by a black woman, Walt Whitman, from Song of the Open Road? That's who she used as an example. This lock jewelry getting to me. Anyway, for y'all, you see how I feel about this book. Y'all see it how I feel about this book. It's about controlling people. I'm gemstones I'm reading. I think our magic is born through us and evolves. I agree. And Olivia, you said the book Slave Religion by Albert Robital speaks to what you're saying about Christianity. Yeah. Oh, I gotta look into that. I don't spend a lot of work. I've done my work. I'm happy to help somebody else and give them references, but I've done my work. I'm pretty solid of where I stand. I used to be in a space for a long time of what if as an adult, in my 20s. I was leaving, but I was in this what if space of, well, what if they're right though? What if there really is a heaven? What if there really is a hell? And then, because I don't know how to just be normal about stuff and I'm not one of those people just sit with a feeling and just be like, oh, I'm just scared. No, I want to get to an answer. I want to find out. I want to get an answer. So I started trying to find answers. And let me tell you, the path this desire to understand, I'm not somebody you could just tell something and that's enough. That's why I don't do well in a relationship and a marriage where a man is another human is just saying that's what it is and that's it. No, it's not. That's not it. I feel differently. And here's why. Let me give you a bullet point, a presentation on exactly why that's not it. Let's just say I'm not for a certain type of men who think that, who might be a little challenged by that. But I don't come into, by the way, I'm not trying to constantly be difficult and challenge someone. But if you coming at me, tell me that's what it is and that's it, I'm not comfortable with that. I struggle in society now when that's the law and that's what it is. Well, once upon a time, it was okay to have me in shackles. So that can't be just what it is. I don't know. Y'all, I'm getting more militant as time goes on. You can see, you mark this on your calendars as I continue to get older. And you'll be like, you know what? That woman did used to make YouTube videos. Now she's 60 something years old out here literally, running around like a goddamn vigilante in the thief of the night, taking out billionaires. She didn't figure out how to get around their security because I'm going to be intelligent. I'm going to use technology to my advantage and magic. I would model myself very much off of Harriet Tubman. She mentions Harriet Tubman in this book, by the way. And in a way that it just sort of, it's like, I feel like she gets you right to the point and you're like, wait a minute, I think we're going somewhere. And then it evolves into something else. I would say you might want to pass on the book. It's not, she has a section on candles and candle ideas. It goes nowhere. It's exercises for you to do. Literally. And I'm going to wrap up with this, and this tells you everything. Using candles for hoodoo is a gentle way to become introduced, but still powerful. I'm going to repeat that sentence, and I want somebody to explain. Using candles for hoodoo is a gentle way to become introduced, but still powerful. Huh? What? And this should go into this thing. Pick a candle that you like. Hold the candle in your hand. This is an exercise at the end of a chapter. So you're holding a candle in your hand. Smell it. Touch the waxy surface. Look into the candle and view the dried herbs that were hand selected for its purpose. Y'all, I'm reading the beginning part. There's no section before this. This is the first part. First of all, when did we put herbs on the candle? So I guess this is an already dressed candle. Let's go there. There's no don't think I'm skipping ahead. This is more about the writing style as well. Then she says, okay, if using in a graveyard, where'd that come from? Why are we in a graveyard in this okay. If using in a graveyard, I recommend keeping it in a place where it can't be blown over by wind. Now, sit in a space that is yours and light the candle. Now, you're probably waiting for something else to come out of this, aren't you? I was. That is the end. This is the section. I just put a question mark because I want to talk about this. That then goes into something different. That's it. That's the exercise. What are we doing with the candle? Smelling it and touching it. Herbs that we don't know what to put on, by the way. There's no area where she's telling me what to put on here. Just so you know, it's not like I'm just like, she has a section about candles. She talks, it's like a third of the page is about candle safety tips. Then she refers to folklore magic work is typically done around a fire, but it never really talks about the camp. Like, what are we doing? She don't even give you the luxury of telling you how to dress the candle. An editor, like the points are not cohesive. The ideas that she's presenting are not being connected. So you just have a lot of words. It feels like somebody who writes content for a lot of posts and they just start trying to string this together and then doing their narration in between. Then she's talking about using a wax melt, a wickless candle. There's no, and please know, it ends with, I recite the appropriate psalm. See the next section for ideas. And then she breaks down the different sections in the Bible. That's always the section. So my thoughts as I wrap up to this is this. Hoodoo is something born out of secrecy, out of violence against Black people in this country. They were people who already had spiritual systems. They took us from different areas, so we all didn't have the same thing. So it's also about healing work, the actual healing of the body and the spirit. So it was mandatory almost. Someone needed to be able, we needed to figure this out. We were already in touch with the earth, so we figured it out in this new land. We had no choice. Our survival depended on it. So a lot of this is about survival. Over the years, the world changed. Our circumstances changed. We were not enslaved any longer. We still had Jim Crow, so we still had a lot of protective work to do. Then we had a new dynamic born from slavery, the dysfunction of that and what it did to our families. We had men running around on us, making outside babies. That's part of hoodoo, y'all, and the type of work that now that was being done, to keep your man close. Think of those spells. Where do you think that came from? How to keep a man close to you, how to keep your lover close to you, that sort of work. There was a reason for that, because again, we're still dealing with the ways of the world. And as a woman specifically, you needed a man for your survival. So again, we're in survival mode. Men worked hoodoo too. It wasn't always just women. Y'all know that, right? You needed a healer because again, we're not being seen as human. So we needed to help heal ourselves. Our food, our practices, our culture in Black Americans, we have culture. We have people, I'm seeing conversations, these people actually saying we don't have a culture. We have a culture. This is part of our culture. But the thing about that is we can make our ancestors proud by evolving in our culture, by evolving our practices, including our spirituality. It doesn't make you more authentic. I swear, listen, if you take nothing else, you are not more or more powerful, more of a witch, more of a hoodoo practitioner because you're doing things the way you've been told that your ancestors, our people did things and they were powerful. Yes, some did. Obviously, we just talked about that. The literacy changed. So you have more people able to read the Bible. So yeah, they're going to use it, right? We had this conversation. But who's the more authentic one? Your grandmom's grandmom or your grandmom's grandmom? Who's the more authentic one? Who's one? Who's the one? The one that came over that actually still had the practices more fresh in her mind or his mind, and they had to do it in covert and secrecy? Who's the more authentic one? Who's the one you want to base off the more authentic, powerful, spiritual person? Which one? Because technically, wouldn't your grandmom's grandmom be doing a more watered down version, the one using the Bible? Or would you want the one fresh off the boat? Y'all don't think of it like that. Everybody, she don't think of it like that. They don't see it that way. You only want to go back to a certain, you want to keep talk. She talks about slavery. A lot of people do. You talk about all this stuff, but it's like there's this thing that these colonizers have done where they stop us from thinking a little bit more critically, a little bit more further. Who do you want to idolize more in their practices? That's your takeaway. Your grandmom's grandmom or the one off that boat? Those ancestors. The one, that first gen. The one where the practices were fresh. That's the one. I'm not mad at your grandmom's grandmom. I'm not mad at my grandmom's grandmom. But they were victims of circumstance, y'all. Have respect for them, yes. But improve upon. Evolve. You know more. You see, you have in all totality. You have access to that knowledge. Why would you want to mimic it and call yourself more powerful? What are you getting out of this? Because you're thinking it's making you closer only to those group of people. What about the people before then? Y'all know better than the dang on Amish. We only want to practice at this point in time. That's enough technology. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the ideal time that God said so. You've got the same rationality. Sherry Stone has the same rationality. And I will end it here. I will end it here. That is how I feel about this book. Y'all, I was heated. This is the toned down version of this review because I am so heated. I'm saying revere. I technically, and I never say this, technically I do practice hoodoo. 100%. I work with herbs and roots. It's part of my lineage. It's part of my path. It's part of my path. I've evolved into a cottage witch. That's what I refer to myself because it's beyond just that. It's not just that, but that's a real central purpose of it. That's a good chunk of my magic, working with herbs. Working with herbs. So technically I do. So this is, to me, I do my ancestors as much as I can. I try to make them proud. Look what I took. Look what the information I took that you guys taught, and that instinctively and ancestrally I understand, and that I can actually read in a book today from those who came before, and that I can put into practice today. I have a garden going just like my grandmom did and her mother did and so forth. I keep doing it. I have houseplants like my mom did. My mother was big on that. My elders and ancestors, I try to make them proud in that way. Not by reading and using Bible passages in my magic, because that's the real hoodoo. That's the not watered down version. We have to learn to evolve. We have to take this practice further. I'm doing it in my own way. Find your way to do it. Like she said she was actually talking to non-Black people, but technically she was kind of on it in the first part of the thing. But that's really for everyone. That answer that I started this live with, that is the answer to everybody. Use your influences in your lineage. Use your ancestral knowledge. That's for us Black people too. It is beyond, and I'm going to tell you something, it's beyond, ancestral is before that Bible came into their hands and came into their psyche. It's before that. I got those ancestors talking to me as well, not just those. But That to think like this means you have to decolonize your spiritual system, your spiritual belief. You have to think pre-colonial times. You have to do the work to find resources. You might have to buy an actual physical book. And I think I might do something like that. I think I might pull up my old homeschool stuff and just share some information and put some things together to help with decolonizing. You need to learn. Being a witch is being wise. Being a practitioner means understanding and constantly learning. You need to go back to the past, but stop just going to a certain point in the past. You have to go past. There's more nuance to this. There's more to this. This is just one part. There's a bigger spiritual system. And then within that system, where are my people from? What part of West Africa? Because what was they doing up here versus down here? What was they doing over in this, where my bloodline, I got a little bit of these other people on the east side. What was they into? And that's finding that information and making a traditional path, or not a traditional, or a path for yourself. Actually, that's a lot of what I do over at leaptaken.com. I help you arrive to what works for you. What kind of path do you want to be on? And let's get you on that path. Maybe you are someone who is guided by the moon's energy, like a lot, like it's a big part of your practice. You can build in your ancestral knowledge, because a lot of that is innate. It's coming through your bloodline, and you just know things. That's coming from the people that came before you. You can build that in. There's a reason that you are drawn to the moon. There's a reason that you feel compelled to do certain rituals and practices by the moon, by the different phases of the moon. It's, yes, that's you, but it's the makeup of you that's coming from something else. Y'all, for us Black Americans who have those real feelings and those compelling desires to do certain things, whether it's by the moon, the sun, or whatever circumstance you're being driven, that's part of this too. We're bigger, and it's beyond a Bible passage. And I will be done. Thank you all for watching. Consider hitting the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Head on over to leaptaken.com. I'll be updating my mentoring services soon, but in the meantime, you can book a reading. I typically use tarot and oracle cards. In my readings, I go by intuition. So depending on who I'm talking to, what I'm working with, I have a reading where we just do a reading, and that's it. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna see what's going on, and then I have something where you get the reading, but there's a custom ritual as well. Check it out if you're so inclined. And then I just have an Ask a Witch. I will do my best to help you. So that's great if you have spell work, some sort of ritual that you have questions about, or you want to know how to do something specific. Ask a Witch is the perfect service to get for that. Or if you're just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together and you want to have a conversation. You're not necessarily looking for someone to tell you what to do. You just want to have a conversation and try to kind of piece this together. And you want to talk to somebody who might, have a little bit more experience. It's been almost 20 years now. I've always fudged that number, but yeah, I'm old. Go ahead and click on that service. But in the meantime, thank y'all for watching. This book got me fired up. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate everybody that tunes in. I really do. And I'm going to go and cool down and put this book away. I will never touch this book again. Matter of fact, if somebody let me know if you want it, I might give the copy away, in all honesty. Like, it pissed me off so bad. All right. Bye. Thank y'all. Bye.